building in this?
It had taken Enron 16 years to go from about 10 billion of assets to 65 billion of assets. It took him 24 days to go bankrupt.
What the hell is he building in this?
This company collapsed so quickly and so entirely. I mean, it was into bankruptcy within a matter of weeks. It just immediately had all the makings of a gigantic scandal.
He's hiding something from the rest of us.
The fatal flaw at Enron, if there was one, you say it was pride. But then it was arrogance, intolerance, greed.
So many of them were blinded by the money that they didn't see that they were sinking their own lifeboat.
I'm Erdan Nasales.
And I'm Shairu Figueroa.
Together, let us know the story behind the fall of the Wall Street Tiger. Aware or not aware, most of them said that they were not. But what makes this issue so important for us to tackle about?
Some have said yes, they know it, but they don't really understand the whole thing or even the main roots of the scandal. And maybe you, who's watching right now, is thinking, are these things relevant?
Enron was an old economy firm competing in the regulated energy economy, founded as Northern Natural Gas Company in Omaha, Nebraska during the year 1930 by three companies, namely North America Light and Power Company and United Light and Railways Company, which have 35% stake each, and Lone Star Gas Company, which have the remaining 30%. Northern Natural Gas Company CEO is Richard Kinder, who is known as Dr. Discipline. Why? Let me tell you the reasons. He held a meeting in the boardroom every Monday morning to interrogate every business unit leader, frequently challenging their strategic plans and numbers. He focused hawk-like on expenses, cash flows, and employee levels. For cash management, Kinder gave all business group managers a budget target for cash flows and profits, with bonuses tied to meeting both targets. But even he demanded performance, he was also realistic, often telling business unit leaders who submitted overly optimistic proposals not to start smoking our own. He was also people-oriented, creating a ecological and family-like environment with a respect for all. Northern grew rapidly during its 1930s, doubling its system capacity during the first 2 years of its incorporation, bringing the first natural gas supply to the state of Minnesota. At the year 1980, Northern changed its name to InterNorth Incorporation, and on that same year, while attempting to grow through acquisition, InterNorth became involved in a takeover battle with Cooper Industries Incorporation to acquire Cruise Hinds Company, a manufacturer of electrical energy products. Who do you think won the fight? After a takeover fight brought a flurry of lawsuits between InterNorth and Cooper, Cooper rescued Cruise Hinds from InterNorth's hostile bid and bought Cruise Hinds in January 1981. The suits were dropped after the acquisition was finalized.
But even after its loss against Cooper Industries, InterNorth still be able to expand its oil and gas exploration and production activity in 1983 by acquiring Belco Petroleum Corporation for about $770 million. That's a lot of money for sure. A big outflow for InterNorth. Belco quadrupled InterNorth's gas reserves and added greatly to its crude oil reserves. Exploration efforts focused on the United States, Canada, and Peru.
Although it was officially named as InterNorth Corporation, the merged company was initially known as the HNG InterNorth.
In the year 1986, the company's name was changed to Enron Corporation, and headquarters were consolidated in Houston. Kenneth Lay, HNG chairman, emerged as the chairman of the combined company. Enron Corporation began divesting itself for businesses that did not fit with its long-term goals, making Enron's chemical subsidiary sold for $603 million, and it also sold 50% of its interest in Citrus Corporation to Sonat Inc. for $360 million.
In the beginning of year 1990s, Enron Corporation had a stated philosophy of get in early, push to open markets, position ourselves to compete, and compete harder when that opening comes. This philosophy were translated into two major sectors, namely the international markets and the newly deregulated markets. But even with this strong philosophy, Enron Corporation had been reaping the benefit of the merge, as its revenue of $16.3 billion had fell less than $10 billion in the 4 succeeding years, but able to recover up to $13.1 billion in the year 1990. The low natural gas prices had been the major cause of the decline. However, Enron Corporation able to raise its market share from 14% to 18% with the help of integration efficiency. At the year 1991, Enron Corporation has built power plants in industrial and developing nations all over the world. Italy, Turkey, Argentina, China, India, Brazil, Guatemala, Bolivia, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, and the Philippines. During 1994, an enormous opportunity comes for the Enron Corporation when the United States were given the power to deregulate the gas and electric utilities, which means that the residential customers could choose their utilities the same way that they could choose their phone carriers. The company moved to residential electricity market in the year 1996 when they acquired the Portland General, an Oregon utility, which could give the company access to California's $20 billion market and also an access to 650,000 customers in Oregon. Meanwhile, some of its earlier projects were going badly. Example is the huge deal to build power plants in India, which worth $2.8 billion, which was held up and cost them $550 million loss. The earnings of 16 to 20% in the early 1990s suddenly shrunk to 11% in the year 1995, then to only 1% in the year 1996. But at the same year, Jeffrey Skilling would replace Richard Kinder as the CEO of the Enron Corporation.
In the year 2000, Enron draped a huge banner at its entrance. From the world's leading energy company to the world's leading company. Fortune magazine claimed that Enron is the America's most innovative company, number 1 in quality of management and number 2 in employee talent. An army of scientists, business people, and academics also said that Skilling is the number 1 CEO in the United States. Later on Newsweek magazine estimated that in the late 1990s, Enron had lost about $2 billion on telecom capacity, $2 billion in water investments, and another $2 billion in Brazilian utility, and $1 billion on a controversial electricity plant in India.
Many questions are left in our minds, like what triggers the collapse, and opening the Pandora's box of issues relating to corporate governance, accounting policies, and regulations. With the revelation of the ugly truth, who should be the one to blame? Or should we say, who are the minds behind this puzzle of frauds that make the whole business community to reflect?
Bankruptcy is a combination of internal and external factors that did play against the company and prevented it to stay in business. The scanning of those factors is made in a mechanism called SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis describes the internal strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of a company. To understand better how Enron's quality of management was, let us use the following SWOT facts.
Welcome to AVT Navigation System. Calculating the route. Please drive safely.
Strengths: marketing and value delivery, Enron did not become overnight an energy giant, serving multitude of customers. Its success is a result of marketing and value delivery. Marketing helped Enron to identify and meet customer needs. Human capital pool. To gain competitive advantage, human resource managers must help the organization develop human pool that has higher overall level of skills, abilities, and knowledge than competitors, and ensure that the skills, abilities, and knowledge within the human capital pool are more closely aligned with the strategic objectives of the firm that is difficult among competitors. Weaknesses. On the path of its collapse, Enron showed the following weaknesses: failed board of directors, corporate culture, and lastly, unethical practices and conflicts of interests. Opportunities. The market and the experience in business provided Enron with tremendous opportunities such as market development in Asian region. The 21st century has seen the emergence of China and India as big energy consumers. Business merger and acquisition. And lastly, supply of high-quality energy. Enron was a worldwide leader in commodity sales and services. It marked and delivered energy in North America, where the power volume increased for 90%, and in Europe, with an increased demand of natural gas volume over 250%. Threats. The external business and global environment presented the following threats to Enron. Competition. There are hundreds of energy companies in the United States with the ambitions to gain a big share of energy market, whether with new technology or cheap price. They are all aggressively involved in research and development. If Enron was still in business, it could be facing fierce competition from other energy companies that, by the way, it took opportunity of its bankruptcy to gain the abandoned and deceived market.
On December 3rd, 2001, the largest bankruptcy to that date in United States history was filed. 10,000 people lost their jobs. Many more lost their retirement and life savings. In total, $25 billion was lost. This is that story. Not of the CEO or the CFO, not of the board of directors, but of the real people.
Enron's reported net income grew from $584 million in 1996 to $979 million in 2000. An average of 16.9% per year, totaling 67.6% profit growth for the 5-year period. However, Enron's reported profits were microscopic relative to revenues. Revenue grew a phenomenal 164.6% per year for the same 5-year period. As a result, there was a steady decline in net profit margin from 4.4% in 1996 to 1.0% in 2000. Let us also compare the profitability of major global energy companies in terms of their profit margin, return on assets, and return on equity. The rapid decline in Enron's gross profit margin revealed a major red flag. The combination of merchant model and mark-to-market accounting allowed Enron to book the whole value of commodity as revenues, rather than just the trading fees or commissions. This table shows the non-derivatives business of Enron had a gross margin of negative $960 million in 2000, compared to a gain from derivatives business of $7,232 million. In other words, Enron's reported profits came mainly from mark-to-market accounting gains in derivatives. The non-derivatives business, including trading, was growing rapidly but generated no profits. Let us now look into Enron's cash flow from 1997 to 2000. Given that Enron's net income margins had also declined from over 4% to 1%, The negative free cash flow should have been a major red flag for any analyst trying to value Enron's equity. It certainly caught the attention of hedge manager Gene Chanas of Kinikos.
The first cracks in Skilling's public image appeared in a conference call with analysts in April 2001.
And then Jeff Skilling took questions. And about midway through the session, there was a questioner who was sort of aggressively wondering out loud why it was that Enron, as a financial services company in effect, could not release a balance sheet with its earnings statement like most financial institutions do.
You're the only financial institution that can't produce a balance sheet or a cash flow statement with their earnings.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Asshole.
The management itself did not make these fraudulent practices alone. A well-known auditing firm that is formerly one of the Big Five accounting firm in the US, the Arthur & Andersen.
To summarize, the Enron scandal consists of several fraudulent acts, primarily involving the overstatement of revenues of Enron, because that time, Enron decided to shift their income-generating activities from being a producer of oil to being simply a middleman in oil transactions. So they serve like a broker wherein you find a buyer of oil and you connect or link it with a seller of oil. Now the problem is the revenue recognition part.
Mark-to-market accounting allowed Enron to book potential future profits on the very day a deal was signed. No matter how little cash actually came in the door, to the outside world, Enron's profits could be whatever Enron said they were.
They consider it earned. Another problem with Enron is they are involved in off-balance sheet accounting. So one of their top-ranking officials created several special-purpose vehicles or partnerships. These partnerships are not declared as owned by Enron, but the company tries to sweep away their debts, their obligations, through a series of several entries. They remove the debts from their books and pass it on to the books of another company.
Really believed that the idea was everything, and that when you came up with an idea, you should be able to book the profits from that idea right away.
Arthur Andersen was found guilty of committing one crime, obstruction of justice, for having destroyed potential evidence by shredding documents. Knowing that such documents could be used in an investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commissions in the US about the crimes such as unfair financial reports by Enron. As a result, Andersen lost its credibility and lost clients. Moreover, Andersen lost its license to practice accounting in the state of Texas because of professional misconduct. Andersen announced its intent to cease to operate, and in the process, it was able to sell most of its practices outside the US.
Ultimately, who was responsible for the downfall of Enron?
Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling, the public faces of Enron, painted a rosy picture of strong profits and healthy businesses. But as the facts began to tumble out in the fall of 2001, the company swiftly collapsed, taking the fortunes and the retirement savings of thousands of employees. There are also others who play the supporting roles. Here are the major players that caused Enron's bankruptcy.
Kenneth L. Lay, former CEO and chairman. After Jeffrey Skilling resigned in 2001, Ken became CEO until Enron filed for bankruptcy. Lay was accused in participating in the conspiracy to manipulate Enron's quarterly financial results. He was accused of making public statements about Enron's financial performance that were false and misleading and omitting facts necessary to make financial statements accurate and fair. Jeffrey K. Skilling, former CEO of Enron. Skilling was indicated of 35 counts of fraud, inside trading, and other crimes related to the collapse of Enron. He surrendered to the National Bureau of Investigation on February 19, 2004, and pleaded not guilty on all charges. Skilling was sentenced to 24 years and 4 months in prison and was fined. Andrew S. Fausto, former CFO of Enron. He helped set up off-the-books partnership that Enron used to avoid disclosing losses and disguise deterioration finances. He also used the partnership to gain millions of dollars for his own benefit. He was indicated on 78 counts of securities fraud, money laundering, fire, and mail fraud, as well as conspiracy to inflate Enron's profit.
Timothy Belden, former head of trading for Enron's Portland OR office. He was Enron's mastermind behind the Western U.S. energy crisis. He developed many of the trading strategies that resulted in California electricity crisis that were used to drive up the prices. Belden pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud but agreed to aid in the conviction of many Enron's top executives. He was sentenced to 2 years of court-supervised release. And finally, David Duncan, Arthur Andersen partner who headed Enron Audit. A partner in the Houston office of Andersen headed the Enron's audit and allegedly orchestrated a document shredding campaign. Arthur Andersen terminated Duncan's partnership shortly after events became known to public.
On January 25, 2002, 7 weeks after the Enron bankruptcy, Cliff Baxter committed suicide.
With the media hounding him because he was mentioned in my memos, and the fact that he had been sued civilly because he'd cashed in for about $30 million worth of stock, I guess it all came crashing down on him.
According to published reports, your husband earned about $300 million in compensation and stocks from Enron over the last 4 years. What happened to all that money?
It's gone. It's gone. There's nothing left.
So the Enron scandal is, for me, the Enron scandal is really a very big eye-opener for the accountants, the auditors, and the regulators, knowing that there would really be people who would trade their integrity, their trustworthiness in the name of revenue recognition, greater profit. There is a very big self-interest threat involving many members of management and those charged with governance. So auditors, accountants, and regulators must always keep a watchful eye. Okay, especially the most treasured asset of an auditor is the name of the auditing firm. Once the firm's name is besmirched, or once the name of the firm is involved with bad cases, especially involving fraud, that usually spells the death of the auditing firm. So we must be very, very careful. Public confidence must be maintained. We must do our jobs properly. We must uphold public interest above our personal interests.
Looking at Enron is like looking at the flip side of so much possibility, because like most things that end terribly, it didn't start out that way. It started with a lot of people who thought they were changing the world, and over time they became victims of their own hubris, victims of their own greed, and so it's like taking so much promise and possibility and looking at it in a mirror and seeing the flip side reflected back at you.
I think the larger lesson was what Enron asked of its employees, which was ask why. And, you know, I didn't ask myself why enough. I didn't ask managers why enough. I didn't ask my colleagues why enough.